My name is Salisbury, and I'm the director of the Ambler Arboretum of Temple University. Topic today is That's Not a Pine, ways to tell different evergreens apart. So a pine is always a conifer, but not all conifers are pines. Conifer simply means cone bearing, and so if the plant gets a cone, it's considered a conifer. And so because pine trees do get cones, it is a conifer, but there's many other plants out there that get cones that aren't pine trees. In fact, we have a whole garden dedicated to conifers here at the Arboretum. We have the Calabrero conifer garden, and you could go see all the variety, or much of the variety, of plants that do get cones that are more than just pines. Because pines are evergreens, there's really no bad time to see pines on campus. And so you can come and visit them all the time. Certain times of the year they'll have cones and be putting their different reproductive parts on display. So they might have some female cones, seed-bearing cones, and then the male pollen-bearing cones out for display. But really any time's a great time to come and see pines here. Arboretum is open every day of the year from sunrise to sunset. I did the introduction for this video under a large tree that was not a pine, and I know that in a couple of ways. And so what I'm going to do now is I'd like to show you the differences between some of the needled evergreens and how you can tell if something is a pine or not. And I'm standing right now in front of this large eastern white pine. And the reason why I know it's a pine and an eastern white pine, it's got these nice soft needles. And the important thing to remember about all pines is that their needles come in bundles. And so if you take a really close look at the branch, you'll see that the needles are in bundles of 5 on this pine. And one of the ways to tell what kind of pine you're looking at is how many needles are in a bundle. But in this one particular case, we have 5 needles per bundle. And so that's the only evergreen that we're going to see, for the most part, that has their needles in bundles. So that's a great identifying characteristic. So if it doesn't have needles in bundles, that's not a pine. So some of the other things you might be looking at, I'll show you. So something that's commonly called a pine but isn't is a spruce. And spruce needles, as you'll see here, do not have bundles at all. They're borne individually, one at a time, all along the branch. And so that's not a pine because the needles aren't in bundles. And one of the ways you can tell this is a spruce is that the needles are kind of triangular in shape. And this is from a Norway spruce. And when you take a needle in between your thumb and your finger, you can spin them because they're triangular. So you can remember that spruces spin in between your fingers. And so that's a good way to identify those. And then sometimes we get firs, and these are used a lot for Christmas trees. This particular one is called a Douglas fir, so it's not a true fir, but these needles are flat. So you can remember that firs are flat. They also are not in bundles. Here, they're borne individually along the stem, but these are flat, so they don't roll in between your fingers. They just sort of slide in between your fingers. And finally, the other plant that we have to look at today is we have a cedar. And so this is a true cedar, Cedrus atlantica, or Atlas cedar. And you'll see here that it looks like the needles are in bundles because they're kind of all clustered together. But these little tiny branches here are called spurs. And the only evergreen that we have on this campus where the needles occur in spurs are these cedars. And you won't see this on a pine tree on spurs. So even though they look bundled, they're actually not. So this is a cedar. So that's some of the ways that you can tell when something is a pine or if that's not a pine.